Hello and welcome to Talking Xbox. This is a show where I do just that. I talk about Xbox. My name is Caleb, and for this episode I'm going to be covering a few things like the developer response from 343 Industries about that Halo Infinite demo, the PlayStation exclusivity of Spider-Man for Marvel's Avengers, Obsidian's Grounded is out on Xbox Game Pass in early access, and the release dates of games like Battletoads and Gears Tactics. But first, did you know that Talking Xbox is available on Spotify and a bunch of other podcast listening things? There'll be a list in the episode description of where you can listen to this podcast on the go, so be sure to check that out. So a couple of days ago, we got a community update from 343 Industries about the feedback and, might I say, backlash over the Halo Infinite demo that was shown at the July showcase. And it's honestly a very good community update. It's well written, and some of the stuff I read in it really made me more confident in Halo Infinite going forward, because I wasn't that impressed with it. I did think it looked fun, but visually I didn't think it was all that great. And the community update that they did are talking about that, and I'm going to read out some of it right now. First, we want to acknowledge that yes, we've heard the feedback coming from parts of the community regarding the visuals in the Halo Infinite campaign demo. While we see and hear far more positive than negative, I'm not too sure about that, but we do want to share a bit more context. From our perspective, there are two key areas being debated around the community: overall art style and visual fidelity. So it goes on to talk about the art style of wanting to make a more classic-looking game, harkening back to the original Halo and making it a cleaner, more classic art style. But I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here. The theme being discussed involves visual fidelity. Negative feedback in this area includes comments around characters and objects appearing flat, simplistic, and plastic light, the lighting feeling dull and flat, and object pop-in. These are all things that everyone noticed watching that demo. We've read your comments, we've seen the homemade examples of retouched content, and yes, we've heard the Digital Foundry assessments. Digital Foundry did a great video about the Halo Infinite demo. If you haven't watched that, I highly recommend you do. In many ways, we are in agreement here. We do have work to do to address some of these areas and raise the level of fidelity and overall presentation for the final game. The build used to run the campaign demo was work in progress from several weeks ago, with a variety of graphical elements and game systems still being finished and polished. That is a little bit concerning to me. The fact that they were working on an only a few weeks old build of the game, and it still looked how it did. This game is coming out this year, in the next couple of months we can assume. And if that's what the game looks like a couple of weeks ago, that doesn't instill me with the greatest amount of confidence, but at the same time, there is a lot of work to still be done. A lot of work goes into the final months of a video game. If you go back to like 2007 and see the footage from the Halo 3 beta and then compare it to launch, that might have been later than 2007, sorry. But if you look at beta footage and then final game footage of a lot of these games, you will see a stark difference. While some feedback was expected and speaks to areas already in progress, other aspects of the feedback have brought new opportunities and considerations to light that the team is taking very seriously and working to assess. We don't have firm answers or outcomes to share yet, but the team is working as quickly as possible on plans to address some of the feedback around detail, clarity, and overall fidelity. The team is committed and focused on making sure we have a beautiful world for players to explore when we launch. So, I know it sounds like PR, damage control, but if you go through and read through this entire post, it actually did give me a lot of confidence in 343 Industries, and I do feel like they are committed to making this game the best that it can be. Should they have shown off this demo in the current state it was in? Maybe not. Am I glad that they are addressing the complaints that everyone's had? Absolutely yes. So many times you'll complain about something and the developers, publishers, whoever won't even acknowledge it. They'll just go silent, you know. So I am looking forward to seeing more from Halo Infinite, which we might see of multiplayer coming up in the supposed event this month of August. I talked about that last episode. But they also go on to talk about that there will be campaign. The campaign will support 2-player split screen and online 4-player co-op. That is incredibly exciting for me. Couch co-op is something that is just sorely lacking in so many games nowadays. Even the four-player online co-op sounds great to me. I love that kind of stuff. I'm glad that it's staying. And they were also saying that for multiplayer, I think it was, they are aiming to get 120 frames per second. For multiplayer, and that the multiplayer will also be free to play. So I won't talk about it too much more, but honestly, the entire post I thought was great. There were a lot of fun things in there, and it left me feeling better about what we saw. It left me feeling better about that demo. So I highly recommend going over to it and giving it a read. It's at halowaypoint.com. You'll be able to find it there, and I recommend checking it out. So on the last episode, I talked about how there were a lot of emissions from the Xbox July showcase, and two of those emissions were from the studios Rare and the Coalition. I expected Battletoads to be at the showcase, and I expected Gears Tactics from the Coalition. And then pretty much right after I recorded and published that episode 2, we got a release date trailer for Battletoads. The release date is now August 20th. And I'll say that I'm actually excited to try out the new Battletoads. I'm not completely 100% on board with the art style direction that they've taken with this new game. That's not to say that I think it looks bad, but it's not exactly what I expected it to be. And if I was in charge of choosing what it would look like, it's not really what I would have chose. But I do think it looks fun. It looks like a fun beat 'em up. I'm not sold on the art, like I said, and the redesign of some of the characters. While the main three Toads look pretty much what I would expect updated versions to look like, the Dark Queen looks incredibly different. It's a choice they've made to very much redesign the Dark Queen character model here. I'm not quite on board with it. I don't think it looks bad, but I'm not entirely on board with the redesign path that they're going with this game. But we won't have to wait too much longer to get our hands on it. Like I said, Battletoads releases on Xbox Game Pass August 20th. And the other game I talked about, Gears Tactics, we don't have a solid release date on this yet. It did come out on PC earlier this year, and we are waiting for that console release date, which may be getting closer, because today, which is Monday the 3rd of August, as I'm recording this, Gears Tactics became available to preload a placeholder on Xbox. It was only around a 100 megabyte download, so it is a placeholder, but that will auto update once the game becomes available for the official preload. But you've got to assume that this going up now means that the release is potentially just around the corner. I did talk about in the last episode about this rumored August event and what we're going to see at it, and whether or not we might get a release date for these games around there. And so this is in keeping if they do want to release Gears Tactics around that time. Of course, some things have been up for preload months in advance before their release date. For example, Wasteland 3 has been available to preload for quite a while now. Again, that one is also just a placeholder, only a couple of 100 megabytes, and that's releasing August 28th, a week after Battletoads. All that being said, I'm very excited to play both of these games, Battletoads and Gears Tactics, just like I was excited to play the next game. Grounded came to early access on Xbox Game Pass and on Steam on PC, and I recorded some of my thoughts and put it out on the Talking Xbox YouTube channel, so I'm just going to play what I recorded next up here. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is something that is very annoying. It's very frustrating to hear this news today. Square Enix and PlayStation and Crystal Dynamics basically came out and said that, hey, Spider-Man will be added as a character to Marvel's Avengers, which is releasing later this year, but he is going to be exclusive to PlayStation. And for once, the internet seemed to agree on something, but on Reddit, where it is also a bit of a cesspool sometimes, people on the Xbox subreddits and the PlayStation subreddits are almost universally agreeing that this is a bad move. People on both sides of the fence aren't happy about this move. Me personally, when talking about exclusivity, I'm okay with exclusives. I'm okay with console exclusives when they're entire games. You know, the first party exclusives are what is used to drive sales of hardware. So when Sony has things like Ghost of Tsushima, Death Stranding, The Last of Us, the Uncharted games, they're all IPs from studios that they own usually. Sometimes they're just exclusive to that console. If you want to play that game, you have to buy that console. Xbox has their own number of exclusives as well. Gears of War, Halo, of course, with Xbox you can also play these on PC, but both sides have their exclusives. Then you move on to timed exclusives. This is one that I don't like, and I'm not as happy with it as I am with just straight out exclusives. But a timed exclusive might be something like a DLC or a game is on a specific console for a certain amount of time. An example of this would be PUBG. When it first came to console, it was a console exclusive for Xbox, and then I think a year later it launched on PlayStation. On the other side of the coin, Control, which came out last year, very good game by Remedy, absolutely loved it. They had a DLC come out called The Foundation, but it came out in, I think, February or March for PlayStation, and it came out in June for Xbox, so it was another timed exclusive DLC. So timed exclusive, they're okay as well, in my mind. I'm not that upset about them. What I do get upset about is console exclusive DLC. This is where I just hate exclusivity. This is where you have a game that is a third-party game. Marvel Avengers is a third-party game, meaning it is not owned by either Microsoft on the Xbox side or Sony on the PlayStation side. This game is coming out on both consoles. What I don't like is them then saying, hey, here's a piece of DLC that you can only play on one console. These games will be the same price at launch. You will pay $60 for this on Xbox, you'll pay $60 for it on PlayStation, and PlayStation is going to get more content than Xbox. That's where I don't like these kind of exclusivity deals. And I am a Sony fan. I have a PlayStation 4, I like PlayStation, I love their exclusives. Those exclusives are the reason I have a PlayStation 4. But you have to admit that Sony has a bad habit of plucking these console exclusive DLCs or exclusive modes and keeping them from other platforms for themselves. I believe Destiny 2 had an exclusivity deal for an exclusive strike or an exclusive raid with Sony. That was content that would only ever came to the PlayStation side of it. And the name of the mode escapes me right now, but Call of Duty Modern Warfare that came out last year had an entire mode plucked from the game and made exclusive just to the PlayStation side of it, and Xbox players would have to go without. That may have been timed, I'm not entirely sure, but it's just a practice where it's these modes, it's these little things, these character packs or something being made exclusive to one side and not to the other. And I've seen a lot of confusion about this as well. People saying, well, Sony owns Spider-Man. They have the Spider-Man video game that came out on PlayStation 4. They own the licensing to Spider-Man. That's not actually true. Spider-Man is an exclusive game to PlayStation. Yes, PlayStation did buy Insomniac, so it is a first party, but they do not own the rights to Spider-Man the character. They work that out through a licensing agreement with Marvel, Disney, whoever. Because Spider-Man has appeared in other games. Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, which was a Switch exclusive, has Spider-Man in it. In all the Lego Marvel games, which are on all consoles, has Spider-Man in it. And now we get Marvel's Avengers coming out in September, I believe, and we get to learn that, hey, PlayStation can play as Spider-Man post-launch. It's not going to be available at launch, it's coming out early 2021, they said. But PlayStation can play as Spider-Man. PC players and Xbox players, we don't get him. This is an absolute shit move, in my opinion. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Xbox hasn't done the same thing, where we have exclusive modes on this side that don't make it to PlayStation. I believe just in the game showcase in July, they showed Tetris Effect Connected, I believe it was called, and there's an exclusive mode in there that is only going to be on Xbox apparently. It's not going to be anywhere else. PlayStation isn't getting that, despite the game already being available on PlayStation. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Xbox doesn't do it. But I also remember back in, I think it was 2017, there was a great interview with Phil Spencer where he was talking about how he actually doesn't like platform exclusive DLC. And when we talk about platform exclusive DLCs, we're not saying exclusive games, first or third party. Exclusivity is good for competition, but exclusive DLC. It would be as if Borderlands 3 came out and said, hey, we're releasing 4 story DLCs. The first 3 you can get on any console, but the 4th one you can only get on this specific console. Or another example, Rocksteady is long rumoured to be making a Suicide Squad game, which I believe was confirmed. But imagine if that Suicide Squad game came out and they said, oh hey, here's the roster of characters you can play. Oh, but Joker and Harley Quinn, you can only play those if you buy an Xbox. It would be something like that. That is a terrible exclusivity deal for everyone involved. It makes the people that get those characters feel entitled, and it makes the people that don't get them feel like they're missing out, which they are missing out, and they would have paid the same price for this video game. But like I was saying, back in 2017, Phil Spencer gave an interview and he basically was saying, people always knock me on this, I've been on record, I don't love the idea or practice of us paying so other platforms can't play or use a certain gun in a game or do a certain level. I know that I say that and Xbox history, DLC exclusivity windows with Call of Duty, I understand the fingers are pointing right back to Xbox. I can only be who I am, it's not the best PR answer, but I don't like that. And I'm not one to really like it either. I don't like this exclusivity of little things like this. If they were going to do this, see, I wouldn't even be upset if the Avengers game was exclusive to PlayStation or exclusive to Xbox, because I'm okay with exclusives if it's the entire game. I'm not okay with getting a chunk of the game taken out and said, you can only take that chunk, you can only play this chunk of the game if you're on this platform that paid us a bunch of money to do it. That's what I don't like. That's going to do it for this episode, I think. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, if you're watching this on YouTube, this podcast is available on Spotify and a whole other bunch of places. And if you're listening on Spotify or some sort of podcast app, there is a YouTube channel for Talking Xbox where you can listen and watch the things that I am talking about. Again, thank you so much for watching and or listening. I'll see you next time.